Hello and welcome everyone to this PAS Marathon Analytics. We're excited you could join us today for Julie Hyman's session, Getting Data Driven on a Budget. This PAS Marathon features back-to-back live webinars delivered by expert speakers from the PAS community. The sessions will be recorded and posted online after the event. You will receive an email letting you know when the recordings are available. My name is George Carlisle. I live in Maryland, USA. And here we go. If you require first the technical issues. If you require technical assistance, please use the question pane located on the right of your screen and someone will assist you. This question pane is also where you may ask any questions. Feel free to enter your questions at any time, and once we get to the Q&A portion of the session, I'll read your questions aloud to the speaker. You are able to zoom in on the presentation content by using the zoom button located on the top of the presentation window. Please note that there will be a short evaluation at the end of the session. This will pop up after the webinar ends in your web browser. Your feedback is really important to us for future events, so please take a moment to complete it. Quest helps IT professionals simplify administration tasks so they can focus on the evolving needs of their businesses. Combined with its commitment to help companies protect today's investments while planning for the future, Quest continues to deliver the most comprehensive solutions to monitor, manage, protect, and replicate database environments. This PAS Marathon wouldn't be possible without their support. If you would like to learn more about them and their solutions, please visit the sponsors page in the PAS Marathon website. Keep learning all year long. Visit PAS.org and check out all the free educational resources available to PAS members. Connect, share, and learn. This PAS Marathon session is presented by Julie Hyman. She is a seasoned software product manager with 25 years of experience in creating and improving software products both at startups and Fortune 500 firms. Currently the senior product manager for Quest Database Tools portfolio, Julie has worked closely for years with analysts across all industries and many leading corporations to ensure Quest continues to provide world-class solutions for data prep, integration, and analysis. And without further ado, here is Julie with Getting Data Driven on a Budget.
Great, and I think we were going to start. Thank you very much for that, George. I think we were going to start with a quick poll of the audience. So I think I just click on the button. No. Uh-oh. Eric, do we know how to start the poll?
Yeah, poll is up and running.
Okay, great. So with this poll, I just want to get an idea from you guys who signed up for this event exactly where you are in your BI implementation process, right? Or is it something that you're thinking about? Are you already in, or have you finished and are ready to rip and replace and start a new one because it didn't quite meet your needs?
People are still voting, so we're going to give a couple more seconds.
Okay, great.
It says 8% have voted.
I think we can close it now.
Okay, so I click on the close button here.
Yes, so 33% says thinking about getting started, 27% already underway, 33% knee deep, 0% about to finish, and 7% done but ready to rip and replace.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty typical. It's exciting to see that you guys are about 33% of you are already started, and yet you're still looking at how to get to this on a budget, right? So obviously that's still a concern on your mind, right? How to get there. So let's jump right in. So the first thing about when you're moving to a BI implementation, you're thinking about it, and especially when you're budget conscious, is determining your need. And this seems really easy. Everybody wants to be data driven, right? There's great information out there. Most successful companies today are data driven, very prominently so, right? We see how these companies can really utilize data to dominate a market and truly innovate. And then also, we know that data-driven companies are more customer-focused, right? Because they have more access to what the customers are doing. They're not anecdotally driven, they're data-driven, and they're enjoying deeper insights. So both of these things are really compelling, but going into BI is not cheap, as a lot of you know, since you've already started, right? And so I think it's important to be very honest with yourselves as an organization and decide what is the urgency, right? Everything can't be priority one within your organization. You actually have to schedule some things first, some things second, because going to becoming more data driven, right? Taking BI not just as a tool that you install, but truly taking it as a new way of doing business within your organization takes time and it takes money. And so you really need a true commitment from an organizational standpoint. Otherwise, you will just implement something, not even sure if people will use it, and then move on to going about, or I should say, move back to doing things the way you did it before, right? So there is a true commitment that's needed from the executive level down to being more data driven. And so I think it's really important to talk about what is the urgency, because that really is going to influence what implementation you choose. Okay, so after you've decided that you want to be there, you know what the urgency is to your business, you got to apply some strategy, right? This seems pretty basic, right? You have to start from the top down. You can't just pick a software implementation. You can't, for example, because you're an Oracle shop or a SQL Server shop, just decide that you're going to use their tool set. Maybe they included some of it in your last contract you signed with them, and just start implementing, right? You got to start from the top down so that you know how to be successful, and even more importantly, you can actually judge if you have been successful, right? Because you've got those goals in mind. So first thing, pick your target, right? Figure out the best place in your organization to start. And I can tell you one place it isn't: everywhere, right? You have to pick and choose your battles, right? Data is probably throughout your entire organization, and so everybody in your organization at some point is clamoring for data and for reporting and for dashboards and for graphics. But deciding that you're going to give everything to everybody is just never going to be successful. You will implement something, but you won't implement anything that's going to please your constituency. It's too large, right? So you got to focus on what's most important. You've got to take that urgency that you've already decided on and the importance of that data to your organization, right? What's going to move the needle? What's going to make a difference in your day-to-day life? Take those and find your sweet spot. But two things you have to keep in mind when doing that a lot of people forget about. One is the capacity you have for change, and particularly that area of your organization. If you pick, for example, a sales area of your organization, and you decide that's where we're going to focus on getting more data driven right away, because that's going to have the most benefit to us. You got to look at that sales organization, the salespeople, the sales support staff, and understand their capacity for change. And so that's both their ability to adopt things quickly and adapt, right? And also the bandwidth they have to do that. If you've given everybody good quota and you're trying to implement something toward the end of a financial quarter, it's just not going to happen, right? People have their priorities, and their job one is to get their job done. And then job two is improve it for next time, improve it for tomorrow. And so if you pick the wrong organization at the wrong time, you're going to have a much more difficult uphill battle. So find a part of the organization that has the capacity for change and the will to change. And so something like support, customer support, is always a good area because they tend to be somewhat data driven to begin with. And so that kind of area where there isn't maybe necessarily a quota, like a sales quota they're trying to meet, might be a good shot. Just an example. Along with capacity for change, right, and picking your target of the organization, you need to think about the quality of the data you already have, right? And by quality of data, I mean, do you have data? I guess that's understood. Is it clean data? Is that data ready for analysis, or is there all sorts of prep work that you have to do for data? Gartner did a survey of or an analysis a few years ago about how much, when you're looking at business intelligence and particularly data science, which is at the high end of business intelligence, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, how much of that time is actually spent doing data science versus how much time that is doing data prep, cleaning and prepping the data. And the general accepted rule of thumb is 70% of the time is on data cleanup, right? Data wrangling, janitorial kind of things with the data, just getting it all in the right format at the right level of detail. Only 30% of that time is actually on that analysis. So if you have cleaner data to start with, that's going to make your trip or your journey to getting to BI a lot easier. Is it complete? There's nothing like starting an analysis project and realizing halfway through, or almost completely through, you don't have enough data for it to be meaningful, right? It's missing some components. If you're doing an analysis of your marketing, right, and your ultimate goal is to figure out how much your marketing spend is influencing your customer spend, and you are missing key components of that, like ways of tracking the drivers to the website to know that certain ad campaigns are driving certain clicks within your website, whatever those measurements are. If you don't have them and you're not capturing them, the data is incomplete. It doesn't matter how much you analyze it. The most you'll ever get from it is inference. You won't get actual cause and effect through that data, which is what you're looking for. And is it analysis ready? So maybe it's clean, maybe it's complete, but there's all sorts of calculations and calculated fields that need to happen in order to make that data analysis ready. This is actually a lower bar. There's very little data out there in the world that is analysis ready, right out the gate. But what is that distance you have to get before you can get it to analysis ready? Something to consider when you're looking at the quality of data. All right, so we want to find the right area of the organization to start with. Right? We want to understand our capacity and our urgency and our dedication to getting to data-driven. It's, beyond just being a great statement, it actually takes a lot of executive push to get you from beginning to the end of the project. And we want to make sure we're picking a really good target that's going to move the needle and make a difference to our organization with the right people and the right data. Okay. So now that we've talked about that, let's talk about what kinds of analysis to consider. Because really, when we say we want to be data-driven, there's a lot of nuances there. And different people might mean different things when they say that. So it pays to be clear, right? Because this is going to truly impact your budget, the kind of analysis you choose. So first of all, there's sort of descriptive reporting, right? This is what we're all used to. This is something where you could just look at the data and very quickly see that sales are up, for example, 10% year over year. It's going to tell you what has happened, right? So you're going to do reporting on what has already happened. And really, when you come to analysis, this is sort of your cheaper analysis, because the money that you spend here is on the tool set typically to get to the data, to make sure the data is clean and all the basics are there. But you're not asking more from that tool set or that solution than really just the ability to access that good data. Next is exploratory analysis, okay? And this is going to impact your budget a little bit more. So this is where you want to actually not only present the facts of the data, but present it in such a way that your analysts can actually see patterns and uncover information about that data that isn't always obvious when you're looking at things in tabular formats, right, or pivot tables. And so an example here is, to looking at that first one, is we're seeing an increase in average sale price for healthcare customers with a particular solution bundle, right? So that's taking a couple of aspects of the data, right? The actual sales of this data we're talking about here, the industry vertical for the customers, and then also your product bundling, right, which might be having to do with different offerings that you have, and bringing that together so that you can discover that pattern that might not have been obvious before. Moving up the chain as far as complexity and cost is inferential analysis. So this is costs more money, and it's really bringing together really disparate areas of data, right? And you might not get to that direct cause and effect, but you can get it so that the data makes sense, and these different data streams are telling you information because you can put them side by side. So again, using our example, it might be something like we're seeing more website traffic and trial downloads when we attend healthcare targeted trade shows. Okay, so when you go to a trade show and you're scanning people at the booth and you're doing all that great lead gen work, that might not be what's generating the most leads out of a trade show, right? Or the most value. It might be just folks who are taking your materials that you're handing out there and visiting your website after. So you really can't say that they came there through a trade show, but you can kind of take a look at the calendar and you can get that inference through that analysis. And it's a little bit harder to do. And lastly, and certainly most costly, is predictive analytics. And this is sort of like the dream of data, being data-driven and data analysis. It's that being able to not only see what's happened in the past and give varying levels of insight into what's happened in the past, but to take that and using statistical algorithms predict what could happen in the future. So if we focus our marketing and sales efforts on the healthcare market, we can increase sales at a greater rate. And really, that's a terrible example of a predictive analysis. That might be a good hypothesis. But what predictive analysis is going to do is it's going to take that stuff that we do every day on hunches and gut feel, and it's really going to solidify it with science. And that's really, I guess, the key word there. It's science. The rest of this can be reporting. There can be interesting things that you do in it, and there's some scientific aspect to it, no doubt. But data science happens on the predictive analytics level. Oops. Okay, so that's the 4 types of analysis. So let's look at like the pricing. And so I've been talking about money here. So let's just take a second and talk about the kind of ways that BI vendors typically price their products. And there are 4 different categories of pricing. First is quote-based pricing. Okay, and so solutions here are tailored to each customer's needs, right? This is where you're meeting with an account rep. He's asking a lot of questions about your organization, understanding how what your intent is, what value you tend to get from the product, and kind of working from a base price and tailoring it to your needs. The great thing about quote-based pricing is that it can fit small businesses and it can scale to the larger enterprise, because it's really all about the customer at this point, right? It's about the customer and what they need and what value they can get from the product. I mean, sure, there's a rule of thumb about the pricing, but the account rep has a great amount of leverage to kind of move that around based on that customer's needs. And so an example of a quote-based pricing system would be something like Sisense does quote-based pricing. We at Quest do quote-based pricing as well. That's our typical pricing model. So those are just 2 examples. I'll try to give an example as I go through each one. The next is fixed plans based on business size. So this is where the company has published fixed pricing tiers that makes the pricing really easy to understand, right? If you fall in tier 1, meaning you're going to use these, you want to have this kind of solution for X amount of users, you're going to pay, $10,000. If you increase that amount of users, the price goes up. So it really is, you pay for usage, which can seem really tempting, I think, when you look at the pricing. It seems clear cut, and you pay more only if you use more. And so I think that pricing can appeal to a lot of people. Typically, you could start small and just say, we're going to bite off $10,000 worth or $100,000, whatever that is, and then we'll gear up as we get more. The only thing, the negative on this kind of pricing, and I do think it is a good pricing model, but the negative is it can go up really fast, right? Because they're trying to, the model from a company perspective, from the vendor perspective, is to hook you and keep you, right? So they don't make it easy to leave the solution, right? They really want you on that upscale model, right? They want you to kind of run up against walls, so you have to increase and increase and increase, which, that's their job to do, right? To maximize for their business. But fixed base plans, when you're looking at them, don't get so excited by the lower tier, because guaranteed you're gonna want to, you're not going to spend a lot of time there. They're going to upsell you into those bigger tiers, and you're going to need them. So take a look at that ultimate pricing that you're going to be paying if you're successful. If we're successful with this, we can expect in 2 years to be paying 4x what we're paying now, that kind of thing. Product set pricing. These are solutions are offered as a suite of modules. So you can start like on a core module and then add on as new modules are desired. Oh, by the way, on the fixed base pricing company, an example here would be like Tableau, right? They have their fixed base pricing. They don't really mess with their base price, but you can scale up, into more and more users at Tableau. So just an example. The product set pricing, again, these are offered as a suite. of modules and you start on core and then you expand what you want to do. You know, you have a core set of functionality, and then as you want more functionality, you have to buy into different modules. Very, very traditional way of doing BI pricing. This would seem very familiar to you if you did SAP, Crystal Reports. Oracle works this way quite a bit. And last is freemium models. And so these are really interesting as well. So they offer a free app as a central part of their offering. Every one of these has a trial kind of app that they offer, or they offer something that only works on your desktop, but you can't publish and share. Each one of these different vendors I've mentioned before has something like that. But a freemium model is a little bit different because the core central part of the offering is free. And then they entice you to move to premium subscriptions to offer a little bit more value, a little more benefit, but you can get a lot of benefit from the freemium piece as well. And so an example of this, I think, would be Power BI is a great example of this. So again, just because we're talking about budget, it's good to think about how you have to look at the pricing put in front of you. If you're looking at something free, seems like it'll be a great deal, but you have to look long run. If you're invested in that technology platform, whether you're paying them now or not, you're invested in that company, and eventually you're going to be on a premium platform. You know, if you're successful, which is your goal, you're going to be starting small and going big. You're going to be starting on a core module and growing. You're going to be starting with a freemium, and they're going to entice you into subscriptions. So when you're looking at the budget, try to think long term, not just short term. Okay, so now let's take a look at the kind of approaches with the BI vendors, right? Because each BI vendor has a way of solving what they feel are all your problems, right? So each one wants you to go with them nearly exclusively. And so let's kind of take a look at the different approaches. The first is self-service, and you're going to hear a lot about self-service as you're investigating BI. And so the focus here is on do-it-yourself tool sets, right? So you want tool sets so that users can get their own data when they need it, which is fantastic, right? When the business can get to the data that they're clamoring for, that certainly takes a lot of pain and pressure off of IT to always be that constant provider, right? Instead, IT can open up, provide a tool set where the customers can do it themselves. These tend to focus on access to data. You're going to be better off if they require minimal SQL expertise. They typically will require a little bit, some a concept of tables and views and relationships, inner joins, outer joins. But if they were the least amount they can require, the better off you're going to be, because you can spread it farther and wider through your organization. Okay? They allow users to connect, query, prep, and report. Okay, and that's going to be, it really does focus more on that reporting angle, right? Being able to get see what's happened in your organization, which if you don't have access to that data of the day, it's life-changing, right? To be able to have instant access to what's happened is critical to run the business well. The next category of vendor approaches would be exploratory visualization. This is where you're going to get into your tableaus. Click plays a little bit here as well. These are companies that focus on providing strong exploration and presentation graphics. And really, I think they entered the market, again, they focus on self-servers. They're allowing users, right, to come in and do this stuff themselves. And they really exploited the market when a lot of users were just using Excel. So you had folks who had grabbing data, doing all their reporting through Excel. And then along came amazing tools like Click, Sisense as well, Tableau, that gave users the power to create beautiful visualizations, not just 3D pie charts. And so that's where these tools tend to have started, and they've really expanded from there. But their focus still really is on getting to the great visualization. So these are allowing users to connect, query, and build fairly complex and enlightening visuals. The thing that they don't typically do well is prep, right? So you have to have really clean data, really already integrated data. And that's where a lot of the folks who are in this space who have invested here, where they find problems, is that this is a great tool if my data didn't need all the work. Remember, we talked about that statistic earlier, 70% of the work is cleaning and prepping the data. And so that's just a little gotcha that happens when you invest in one of these visualization platforms, or that we've seen happen with our customers in the past. Okay, next is integrated KPI dashboards. This is great. This is where we're going to, the promise here is you're going to have a single dashboard, a single source of truth sure we've all heard of that and a little sick of hearing of that. Single source of truth on a web-enabled dashboard that everybody from executives, to sales folks, to operational folks can go to, can drill down, and can see all the data. And so this really is about organizational enablement, right? So you notice these first two, it's about allowing individual users. The KPI dashboards is really about allowing an organization, right, to make these key KPIs available. The key word here is it's development. These dashboards require engineers. So for the first time in these three approaches we're talking about, you're probably hiring a set of engineers just to support these dashboards. So not just infrastructure as far as servers and maintaining servers, but actual specialized developers, because not everybody can develop these dashboards, right? And the last one is that predictive data science, right? So this is focusing on future with sophisticated algorithms. This is science. This requires folks with specialized degrees or specialized skill sets to get in there. And again, this is about enabling an organization more so than the individuals within it. Certainly everyone's going to benefit if the company's doing better, but this focuses on giving the organization answers to questions, not necessarily answering a question that pops up in the business. Okay. So very predictable. This is the money range, right, that you're going to be looking at here when you're spending on tool sets. Self-service query and reporting is what you can really do on a budget. You can kind of break into the exploratory visualizations. When you start getting into dashboards, you're going to have to hire engineers to support those dashboards. And data science has its completely own staffing that you're really going to have. That's not something that is for an engineer to do. That's for a data scientist, someone with a specialized skill set. On the dashboards, the thing to remember here too is even after you get the first dashboard up, you're going to want to iterate. The one thing you can guarantee when you start showing people data is it will generate more questions, right? Just think of any experience you've had where someone has shown you data, even if it's data that's incredibly powerful and interesting. I can guarantee you within the first 5 minutes of being exposed to that data, you had 3 more questions about it. Oh, that's totally interesting. Can we see it by company vertical? Oh, that's great. Can I see the support cases broken up by region? All those questions that they have, and those are all great questions. And even if the information is there in the data, if someone hasn't already developed that report and programmatically put it on that dashboard, then basically you're downloading it to Excel and doing it yourself again. So that's where the money comes in from the dashboard. It's the upkeep and the ongoing progression of those dashboards. So what do we recommend then? So does it mean that when you go and you have a budget, you have to stick sort of with self-service query and reporting, and by that regards, you're kind of sticking with reporting on what's already happened, you're stuck with that level of analysis? We don't see that. What we see with our successful customers is we see this, right? We see a mixed solution model. And so in the middle here, I've got, if you think about the number of data producers, we talk about data producers and data consumers, right? The data producer is the person who's developing the report, developing the analysis, maybe coming up with a hypothesis, and then they're creating a report, whether it's a dashboard or a visual or a tabular report, and they're sharing that with the rest of the organization. There's always a smaller number of producers than there are consumers, right? So you're really paying for the most part. There's some models where you pay for consumers, but you usually pay the highest price per producer. So you want it where you're looking at the largest number of producers, people throughout your organization that want access to their data and want to be able to answer questions with their data. Those folks, you want to give them self-service query and reporting. Leverage this throughout your organization as much as you can. What you don't want to do is lock people out from their data so that their only insight they're getting is the one that's coming through, three people's other priority lists and other queues, and having specialized developers where they can't get their questions answered at the speed that they want, right? Talk about a cliche, the speed of business. But if you're someone working in an area and you think a piece of information is critical to you and you doing your business better, you want to enable that person to get to that data. You don't want to tell them, boy, it would be great for you to get to that data. I'm going to put you in line behind these other 10 initiatives. And when we get to you, we will. Because they'll lose interest in improving their job if they can't get to the data, or if they can't fulfill that desire to get to the data to improve their job, right? Improve their work. So again, you want to take self-service query and reporting, which is at that lowest budget end, and spread it as wide as you can throughout your organization. Get the people who want to get to data, give them the tools to do that, right? Next, you want to take your second split of users, right? And you want to layer into that exploratory visualizations. For the folks that are really interested in uncovering patterns, they have that mindset or they have that skill set or that job title, you want to give them the tools where they can discover the patterns. And visualizations are truly one of the best ways to discover patterns in data. It's just the way our brain works, right? Putting colors and images in front of us really helps us, our creative part of our mind, really take hold of that numerical scientific data and have it make sense to us and maybe reveal to us new things. So you want to take that higher priced visualization tool and layer it on top in your organization for the folks that it will be meaningful for. You don't want to give it to folks who are never going to use it or invest time into learning it, or who are using it to create a 3D bar chart, right? You want it to give it to folks who are really doing some deeper dives into the data. Next, you want to take a small group of BI engineers that create an integrated dashboard for the whole company, right? I think having a basic dashboard that gives the basic numbers that are the guidance for how the business is going is sort of a prerequisite for most businesses today, right? We all want to be working from the same numbers, at least at that high level analysis, right? And so having a dashboard where you can have, again, a small group of BI engineers can create that nice dashboard that's always available, that's always up, that's available to executives who maybe aren't going to self-service, maybe aren't going to do some exploratory visualizations. They just want to get the answers to their KPIs. How are we doing this quarter over last quarter? How are we doing by region? Whatever they are. You want to take that and you want to put it on a dashboard. And so you want to invest a small group of BI, but you want to keep it as small as possible, right? You don't want to be using these dashboards to answer individual, niche areas of the business. Let them answer their own questions with these two items over here, self-service and their own visualizations. And you just want to be answering the general questions, the sort of overarching questions for the business up here on the dashboard. The things that you would talk about, let's say, in an all hands meeting, a quarterly business review. These are the kind of things you'd put on the dashboard. And then if you have stuff that starts floating up, that's been discovered through self-service, a particular report or a particular way of looking at data, or something in the exploratory visualization that's a new pattern that you want to promote, you can promote it up here and put it on a dashboard. But you allow people to do their own prototyping of reports if you make items 1 and 2 more widely available. And then lastly, for some companies, this is a dream. For some companies, bigger companies who have more budget, it's reality. But if you can fund a targeted, highly skilled data science initiative to work on forward-thinking problems, then you should be doing so right now, right? You really should be. This is becoming more and more of a standard, but it still is a bit of a reach for some companies. The best way to start with this is to start with a very small group. That way you can judge its success very easily. Give them 1 or 2 missions, right? To give them one hypothesis to test and answer, right? And then have them come back with it. What you don't want to do, what I've seen been very unsuccessful, is where they just think, oh, we want data science, and so they start hiring data scientists. They create a data science group. They have a data science, officer running that group, and then they don't have any very specific way of judging if that group is being successful or not, right? That group can be spending a lot of time on that 70% of just complaining about the data and the cleanup, and if you're not getting anything out of it, it makes it very difficult to judge, is it successful or am I being impatient, right? Is it not working or am I being impatient? So you want to get a very small group with a very simple question and have them try to answer that first. And then once you have that success, it's a matter of replicating that success as opposed to throwing a whole bunch of stuff at it and wondering for a year, 2 years as you write those paychecks and you fund that effort, whether it is successful or not. Okay, so that's our recommendation, which is, just to kind of recap it. It's try to give as much of the business the tools so they can self-service, they can prototype their own reports, give them access to their data where appropriate, and find ways of giving them access to data you're nervous about giving them access to, whether that's replicating to a reporting server or just setting up a simple copy each night, whatever it is. give as many people self-service access so that they can do that basic reporting, which is tell me what's happened in the organization so I can make my decision tomorrow based on what happened yesterday, right? And then layer in the deeper visualizations for the folks where it will actually make a difference and who will use it. Do set up a dashboard, but try to keep it small and just to the KPIs that are meaningful to the whole organization. Don't try to fill your niche KPIs here. And then if you can, get to that predictive data science by starting small and very targeted. So, having said all that, I think I still have a few minutes and I will demo you our product. So the reason why we talk a lot about analytics and how to do it is Toad, which is the product brand that I'm associated with and I oversee, which is well known for Toad for Oracle, been in the market for a long time, but we also have Toad for SQL Server and Toad for DB2, Toad for SAP Solutions, Toad Data Modeler, Benchmark Factory. We've got a lot of products within this line. We work with developers and DBAs every day to make it easy to work with those databases. Well, we also have another product called Toad Data Point. And Toad Data Point is sort of a classic DIY query and data prep tool. Right, so talk about that first bucket I talked about, where this enables folks to self-service off of their data. And so I'm just going to give you a brief overview of Data Point. Certainly that's a pretty rich tool, but I'll just give you a quick little walkthrough. So this is Toad Data Point. It's installed on the desktop. It's not a web app. It's an app that's installed on a desktop. It allows you through a single interface to connect to nearly any data source. We say it's nearly limitless connectivity, meaning you can connect to an Excel file if you have data in an Excel file. You can connect to nearly any relational database, either the ones listed here or anything that has an ODBC connection you can connect to. And so anything from Redshift to Maria to MySQL to Oracle. We use both ODBC connectors and we use the native client connectors where we can. And so you can connect to all these sources. We also have business intelligence data sources where we have developed the connector. So to Google Analytics or Oracle BI Enterprise, which, by the way, if you're using Oracle ERP in the cloud and moving to cloud and you no longer have access anymore to your Oracle database, you can use this connector here to connect to the subject areas that are available to you. So you can still do all your reporting self-service. You don't have to use the tools and the web queries that they provide you. You can connect directly. And then also NoSQL sources, right? Everyone wants to connect to, well, today it's Mongo, but it was Hive and HBase. We still have a lot of that, some Impala. So you can connect anything. So a single system where you can connect to nearly any data source. Once you've connected, let me connect really quickly. I think I lost my VPN access. So you guys have to wait 1 second while I connect to VPN. Sorry about that. Once you connect or for me, it's a VPN. Once you connect to a database in here, then you get to explore that database. So I have all of the all the databases that I have access to. Here's my Quest Dev. Here's all the tables that I have access to, and I can see some basic information about those tables, the size of those tables. I can even click on a table and I can see the fields. So it gives me, as a non-SQL person, a non-developer, it gives me a lot of instant access. I can also explore table relationships. I can drag a table. Let's drag my contact table out here on this palette. And it will show me not only a contact table, but all of the related tables. So if my backend database has relationships, I'm going to expose all those relationships. I can even quickly get a Venn diagram and see what the matchup is between these data, right? That I can see that every value in my contact table has a corresponding value in my orders table. So there's no contacts without orders and there's no orders without contacts, right? So it gives me a very quick way of assessing that relationship. If a table didn't have a relationship, so let me drag one in here. Let's see if it doesn't. Or if there is a relationship that's not embedded in the backend database, I could create my own relationship. So I'm not affecting the back end, but I'm just documenting it so that I can use this for queries. I can add notes about this relationship as well. So it's a way, as you're working with databases that don't have those back end instantiated relationships in the database themselves, where you can sort of document and create your own map to your data. Okay, we'll take that out. So it's got a diagrammer, very easy to do. I can also explore this table a little bit more. I can look at the columns in more detail. I can actually get a glimpse of the actual data. I can see triggers. You know, a lot of this stuff is super technical, so it may not be useful to everybody, but you know, it's there for them if they want to have access to it and see that information. Probably the best thing is to, in fact, let me start with my diagram. I'll start from here, is to start and I can build a query. So easy. So now here I am. Here's my database. Let me organize those tables, and I'm just selecting fields. Again, I don't write SQL super fast, so this is a godsend for me. I can get to my data. I can pick my fields out here, and it's actually building the SQL for me. That's what it's doing in the back end. And so I can go out here, and I can even add where clauses, and I can choose a value, or I can say, you know, it's choose a selection of values, do a like, do a formula. There's a lot of depth into what I can do. I can do subqueries and unions and all sorts of things out here. So make sure I remove that. After I've done a query, I can go out and I get my result set. Oops. Let me simplify my query here so I can pull back some data. Oh, that's my address table causing my problems here. I oversimplified a little bit there. So we just drag and drop directly in here. Here's my customers and my contacts. We'll just make it very simple and add all the columns there. Once I've got it, I've got all my data here. I can search, filter, I can sort. I can also send it directly, I can export it directly to Excel. So if what I'm trying to do is get to Excel, I can do that. I can save it to local storage, which is a built-in sandbox of database that I can save it to. And I can schedule for that to be refreshed every day before I get in so that I can work with this data set locally if I'm allowed to. And I can just work with it that way. I can also, if there's more that I want to do to the data, I can transform and cleanse it. And so again, without having to write any SQL, I can do great things to the data, like I can replace values. So let's replace wherever there's a null. Replace this with NA. Right, I can go ahead and apply that rule, take a look if I like it to the data. If I don't like it, I can find that rule again and I can change it and say, you know what, let's just say unknown. I don't like NA, and I just update that rule. And so I'm just defining a set of rules that I want to happen to the data. I can take a date field, which are just really hard to work with across different databases, and I can extract, let's say, the month, the year, and the day into separate columns, right? So I'm going to quickly create a column called year and month and day, and I can separate this out. I can create calculated fields, so I could create an age field off of the birth date, all sorts of things I can do. And what I'm actually doing is just creating a set of routines against this data, which I could save to my repository and use again and again on different data sets. So a very easy way to do complex things without having to have complex knowledge. You can also take that original data and I can choose to profile it. So I can send to my data profiling. And what profiling is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to get a better understanding of what the data is comprised of, right? So I can quickly see that this is a first name field. It's fully populated. It does have some duplicates in it, and I can go into my patterns category. Actually, let me look at email. That's always a good one to look at. Here's my actual patterns in my data. Most of my data, 94%, is something dot something at something dot something, but I do have ones that have an apostrophe in there. So let's take a look at those. I can double click and get access to that data very quickly, and I can say, oh, this is something I'm going to need to fix in the data, right? Because it shouldn't have the Ryans right there. So it gives you a lot of access to your data this way. After you've done all that cleanup work and you've done all your machinations to the data, you could then do pivots and create pivot grids from the data, right? So you can do basic pivots. I chose not some great data here, but we'll say customer name. And this should look very familiar. Anybody who's pulling their data out to Excel in order to do basic pivots, you can do it in product and not take the data and pull it out into a desktop file system, right? So you can still do your pivots with the data in here. And so just do this again here. You can create really complex pivots. You can get into formatting and different things like that. And again, you can export it to Excel if you want to, or HTML or PDF. So you can go to pivots. You can take it to dimensional views of the data. Tons of things you can do after you've got that data right. In addition, all of this that I've done, you can also automate it. And that's just automating it on the desktop so that I can either do it through one click, write the query, clean the data, run a profile, create 3 pivots, all with a single click. So I'm stringing those things together, and it's a simple drag and drop to do that. Or you can schedule it to happen at a certain day and time. As long as your computer's on, it works, and it kicks off. But also, we have a server component that you can publish it into if you wanted to put it in a more 24/7 environment where you can collaborate with other people. Okay, so that was a very, very brief overview of Toad Data Point. It's a really rich tool. Once you learn how to use it, you can work very, very effectively with any kind of database. So if you're used to working with Oracle, no problem. It's all the same once you've made the connection inside Data Point. You can then query a SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, very similar. You're not going to have to learn a new tool set. Data Point does that interpretation for you. In addition, and I'll show this one thing and then we'll get questions, we have a new aspect to Data Point where you're working in more of a workbook fashion. So if we're used to something like Hyperion or Brio, this should look very familiar to you, where you create a new workbook and you create a new result set, and then you hang pivots off that result set, and you're kind of moving through the system in sort of a workbook fashion, right? So now I've got a new query, same fashion that I just did. I'm going to drag tables onto my query area. Here's customer. Oops. I'll just query my customers make it simple. Run this query. Looks good. And then I'm going to add a report at this step, or I'm going to add a pivot grid, or I'll do both. First, I'll add a pivot grid. So now I have a pivot grid off that query, and then I go up to this query again and I add an Excel report. And then I want to also add a different pivot grid. And then off of this pivot, I want to add an Excel report. So it allows you to build a combined sort of hierarchy tree of artifacts off of your data. And then if you wanted to, you could add a whole nother result set into the same workbook. That was probably the fastest overview I've ever done of Data Point. If you want to learn more, you can go out to our website. We have a website called Toad World, TOADWORLD.com, and you can learn more about Data Point and our other products there. And we have a 30-day trial you can download and use for 30 days and ask any questions that you want either through our support staff, or you can always email me directly. Okay, having gone through that whole demo, why don't I end my demo part there and just hand it over to see if there's any questions from the audience.
All right, so I'm going to look here and see if there's any questions. Let's see here. At this time, it does not look like there's any questions, but let me just give it a minute.
Well, hopefully, if there's no questions, it's because everything was so clear, although that might be wishing for a bit too much. Again, if you want to experience what we have to offer for data prep and reporting, it's toadworld.com, and then just look for Toad Data Point. And again, there's a free trial available just through that website. And my email again is julie.hyman, Hyman, @quest.com, QUEST. And feel free to reach out and let me know if you had any questions off of this presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions of anything that comes up.